What's up, guys? Obviously, big topic going on right now in the college football world is the quarterback controversy in Alabama with Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts. And outside of that, of course, there's things going on at Ohio State as well as Maryland. But as of right now, for today, we're going to be talking about Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback controversy, which in my opinion does not exist. What's going to happen today, we're just going to go ahead and take a look at some of these segments from these analysts, listen to their thoughts. After we hear their thoughts, I'm going to pause it, kind of take away some of the things that they said, share my own thoughts, and then we'll move on to the next segment. But yeah, that being said, let's go ahead and get this thing started.
I'm here for every second of it.
But it happens all the time. Like I said, do you go with who got you there, or do you go with who got you over the top? You had the Nick Foles, you had the Carson Wentz, you had Drew Bledsoe, you had Tom Brady. So quarterback controversies are rare because very rarely do you have guys get you very, very far and then someone gets you over the top for a Super Bowl or for a national championship. So
that said, you do the college football for us here. I mean, I think the conventional wisdom is that Tua is the better quarterback, certainly the better passer, and gives you the opportunity to have a more diverse offense.
Yeah, I called the Alabama spring football game at Kirk Herbstreit and Joey Galloway, and just talking to the staff there and Nick Saban, they said Tagovailoa is just more polished. He has a great arm and he sees coverage as well. Jalen Hurts is more of a run-first guy. If the first option isn't there, he just takes off. He does not show enough patience to go through the progressions. Tagovailoa will be the guy, and the problem then becomes Jalen Hurts is going to want to transfer.
He will probably transfer. And the other piece of that, too, is that Alabama has won primarily based on defense over the years.
Yeah.
And so do you want to put a little high-risk, high-reward circumstance in there, or do you go with the safe Hurts, who, if he's running the ball primarily, he isn't going to turn it over that much either when you let your defense win games? I'll be very interested to see how that thing goes, as I think Tua will win the job.
Yeah.
But then if all of a sudden, they throw some picks or whatever happens, will the fans say, you know something?
Right.
Maybe we were better when we were just running the ball all the time.
Coach, as a former
Let's go ahead and address some of the thoughts that those analysts had. First thing, I think his name is Richard Jefferson. I might be wrong. Anyway, he's the guy that played for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So he says it's obviously not an easy decision because do you stick with the guy who got you there, or do you go with the guy who got you over the hump, in this case, who won you the national championship, which was Tua. And the thing is, that argument is, in my opinion, is flawed, because he's saying, do you go with the guy who got you there? Now, of course, Jalen is the one playing quarterback for Alabama, so you're going to say he's the guy that got them there just because of how important the quarterback position is. But you've got to see that very differently, especially at Alabama, because when you think of Alabama and look at Alabama is a program built on dominant defense and a phenomenal running game, right? And that's because they're built around typically 4 or 5 star O-line, and really everyone on the team is going to be a 4 or 5 star player. So with that being said, with this team being built on a dominant defense and a great running game, to say that Jalen is the guy that got them there, I just simply can't agree with that, because any casual football fan would even know that when it comes to Alabama, it's the first thing that comes to mind is defense and running, right? Quarterback position isn't necessarily something that's going to be the first thing to pop into your head. Now, don't get me wrong, Jalen definitely, had his moments and made plays that decided the outcome of these games. But in my opinion, to say that he's the guy that got them there, really at the end of the day, if you don't have that defense, Alabama's probably going to be an 8-4 team, right? Because the defense is, the saying goes, defense wins championships. And we've seen that with Alabama and how much they've dominated the college football world since Saban's taken over. And then with Greeny, that's the guy in the middle. He said, that's great and all. He even mentioned, Alabama's built on defense and a running game. Do they take the risk in putting in Tua and, deciding to to inject some passing game to to adjust the offense to Tua. And he's more of a passer. He's got more of an arm than Jalen, of course. And he's saying, but at the same time, that's going to be a bit more risky. That's not Saban's style, right? And yeah, of course, it's not the way that Bama's been. But anytime that you've got a quarterback that can throw the ball downfield, especially with an elite arm like his, dude, you've got to play him. For the simple fact that when you put him in the game, that's going to open up opportunities for your running game, for the play action. I mean, just about everything you do is going to get better with a quarterback at the helm, because you're playing at Alabama. You've got Heisman candidate running backs in the backfield, ready to go, ready to run through walls, surrounded by 5-star O-linemen. I mean, this stuff, we can repeat all day. But to simplify it, man, all I'm saying here is whenever you bring in a quarterback, that is another threat through the air, that's basically gonna open up the run game, because guys are gonna have to account for the passing game. So they're gonna have to drop more guys in coverage. If they bring guys into the box and pack the box, guess what? That opens up the passing game. And with Alabama, the talent at the skilled positions is ridiculous. So not only does Tua have an elite arm, but he can throw these guys open. There's just so many possibilities with the talent at Alabama, and putting Tua in is not a risk, because it creates more opportunities for your team. It turns your offense into multi-dimensional offense that can do more than just run the ball. Because the fact is that when you have Jalen Hurts in the game, he is a run-first quarterback. And if you are able to shut down that running game of Alabama and force Jalen to throw, which we saw in the Georgia game, and actually in a few other games in the season where it was really close games, that's where Jalen struggles. So whenever you can become a two-dimensional offense, a multi-dimensional offense, and you're not limited to running or one dimension of an offense, you're more dangerous, and there's less risk involved, because you're creating opportunities for more individuals. But yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to this next segment. I think this was either SEC show or College Football Live. Might be SEC with the advertisements in the back. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in, kind of listen to what these guys got to say, and then I'll kind of go ahead and touch on some of their thoughts with my own, and we'll go from there.
Former national championship winner that's dealt with quarterback battles in the past. What do you think those two quarterbacks need to show Nick Saban in order to be named the starter?
Well, that's just the thing. Everybody thinks it's kind of a foregone conclusion that because of what Tua did in the national championship game, that he's crowned the victor.
So you do not?
I do not think that. I think behind closed doors, because of what goes on in the coaching world, there's a lot of debate going on right now. You're talking about benching a guy that's being responsible for 61 touchdowns personally in 2 years, a 93% winning rate when he starts at quarterback, and a guy who we don't know what that locker room looks like, because that all comes into the debate. What does the locker room look like? Who thinks that which quarterback gives them the best chance to win? And we don't know that. We have, wait a minute, David. We have one sample size.
Yeah.
We have one half of football.
Yeah.
The other guy's got 30-something games.
Do we have those numbers for that half?
Doesn't matter.
Well, how about the numbers for Jalen in the first half?
Numbers can lie.
Okay, I agree, numbers can lie.
They do.
And they do crazy. Yeah. Okay, let me ask you a question. Two people on this panel play quarterback. Could they be 26-2 with Alabama? With Jalen Hurts' record?
Ask the dude over here who just won a national championship.
You were pretty close to that record, right?
Yeah, well, what I'd say, though, is that this is a different Alabama team.
Okay.
So that's why it might be different altogether, because, yes, maybe the last 2 years in 16 and 17, they needed a pedestrian quarterback that's not going to make mistakes because of the quality on defense.
For the most part, Alabama has done that throughout Nick Saban's whole tenure. They haven't had a guy. They don't need to air it out to smoke. They're more talented than everybody they play. They're going to ground and pound you. They're going to play great defense, right? This is what they've done. So I get what you're saying, and I get numbers lie. Tua can do things that Jalen Hurts cannot do, and that is throw the football down the field. You recruit all these five-star guys, You don't use him with Jalen Hurts. It isn't Jalen Hurts. 26-2 is great, and he's a great runner. He cannot throw the ball down the field and make you pay.
And we saw last year that hit home in the biggest way in the biggest games. The ineptitude of being able to even give a threat of passing the football. When you have a threat of being able to throw the ball downfield, your running lanes open up. It's easier on the offensive line. You convert more third downs. That's an offense that averaged almost 40 points a game in the SEC that can be better next year with Tua.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying he needs to throw for 3,000 yards. But the threat of it is there, and he absolutely can. Yeah. We've seen Jalen Hurts' ceiling.
I will say this, though.
I've seen enough.
And I know both of you guys, you're on the bandwagon. I get it. I get it. But I'm going to give you a coaching perspective, okay? The reality of it is we don't have all the information.
Yeah.
You guys have one half of information.
Agreed.
The other guy has 2 seasons of information. Yeah. We don't know what goes on in the meeting rooms. You know how important it is. You don't know what goes on in the weight room. You don't know what practice looks like. Yeah. All of those things those are ingredients to figure out what this recipe is going to look like. And we don't have that information. It's going to be a fascinating debate, and it's going to be a fascinating evaluation of the two, because to be honest with you, our sample size based on what they see 365 days a year, maybe totally
I don't
different.
disagree, Greg, but let me tell you something. I had a 5-course meal in that national championship game in that second half. Because that dish was tasty, brother. Yeah. That thing was really, really, really good.
Hear you are on the Kool-Aid. Yeah. Yes. I got it. Yeah. You are on the Kool-Aid. With a lot of other people, I'm just telling you, behind closed doors, the reality of those conversations are simple. This is not as easy as it looks because of one half.
It's not, and I agree with you. Look, Tua is an elite thrower, and we all know that. Yeah. He's a lefty that can throw it down the field, that can see the field and anticipate better than Jalen has. And honestly, Jalen in the last couple of games looked a little gun-shy. He looked a little afraid to make a mistake. And if you play the game scared, it's going to be difficult, I think, to make the plays necessary to win the game. But the real question remains, is it fair to the runner?
All right. So what I took from that segment was basically, obviously, Coach Gene Chizik brought up the fact that, this isn't going to be an easy decision. You've got one guy over here who's got a 26-2 record as a starter, 93% win rate, and he's, responsible for 61 touchdowns throughout his career at Alabama. And then what happens is that David Pollock jumps in and he goes, hey, dude, how about we have a look at the numbers that Tua put up in that second half? And then Gene Chizik goes, why are we looking at the numbers? Numbers lie. After he just used numbers to justify why he believes, that Jalen is, of course, it's a great argument, of course. But it's just funny how he jumped in and said, numbers lie. Let's not look at the numbers when he just used numbers. Anyway, with that being said, those numbers, 26-2, 93% win rate, 61 touchdowns, that's all phenomenal. But if you look at the actual quarterbacks that have played at Alabama in the past, since the Saban era, since I want to say around 2008, I could be wrong, but my point here is that if you're a quarterback at Alabama, you're typically going to have a 90% win rate. For the simple fact that your job is made a lot easier when you're surrounded by the type of talent that you're surrounded by. The thing about Alabama, they've had a top 5 defense since 2008, and guess what? That's the beginning of the Saban era, or right around that time. And they've had a number 1 recruiting class in the nation since, but in, I believe, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So, of course, as a quarterback at the University of Alabama, your job is made a lot easier when you're surrounded by these types of talents and these types of blue chip players. Now, not taking credit away from Jalen, he's a phenomenal athlete, but I'm just trying to put it in perspective here that the 26-2, record is great, but at the same time, you have to look at the facts, and the fact is that at Alabama, you're surrounded by, arguably the most talented high school players in the country, and they're coming to Alabama, and they don't call Alabama the NFL factory for no reason. Of course, we continued along in that segment, and David Pollock, he brought up the topic. He's like, these two guys right next to me, They both played quarterback position, right? Can both these two guys go 26-2, right? And Greg McElroy, obviously former Alabama quarterback, I feel like he didn't really keep it real in this talk, because he goes, well, these Alabama teams aren't really the same. These Alabama teams are different. And, dude, how so? Think about it. How so? I think he kind of felt, a little offended, because David Pollock was basically saying, dude, Alabama has never been the type of team to air it out. They've never had a quarterback. The quarterback position has never been needed in order for them to dominate games. It's like he said, it's been dominant defense and a phenomenal running game. So I think Greg McElroy took offense to that. So he was trying to, somehow make himself look better. But anyway, what I'm trying to get at is David Pollock's 100% right. If you take another dual threat quarterback from around the country, insert him in at the Alabama quarterback position, he's going to have a damn good chance at having a 90% win rate, at going to the SEC championship, going to the college football playoff, and that's for the simple fact that his job is made a lot easier when surrounded by these types of players. Now, of course, Coach Gene Chizik, as the segment moves along, he brings up the fact that there's a small sample size for Tua, and there's a much bigger sample size for Jalen. We've seen more from Jalen. He's got 28 games under his belt. Tua's got one half. And really, he's got more than one half. All we saw, as far as the masses, the public, was that one half. But in reality, this kid's been consistently performing at this type of high level since high school. He went to the Elite 11, won the MVP, and then when he came to Alabama, his spring game, I believe, and even just practices, and then after the actual national championship game, you heard Coach Nick Saban talk about Tua. He said, this guy's been performing well at practice, at scrimmages, at our spring ball games. I mean, throughout this whole time, we knew if we had to bring him in, we'd have the utmost confidence in him. So really, they have enough of a sample size to know what he's capable of, and that they know that they can trust him. And at the end of the day, that's really what all the coaches looking for, is that they have the confidence to bring them into the game when they're needed. Now, in using that same argument of sample sizes, you've got Jalen Hurts, right? So smaller, sample size with Tua, and then you've got 28 games from Jalen. And in that same sample size, that bigger sample size with Jalen, of course, there's more experience there. But really, what we saw in that sample size is what Jalen is incapable of. He's had 28 games with the University of Alabama, and of course, he was just a sophomore last year going into his junior season. But throughout these 2 seasons, we have a bigger sample size to see exactly what Jalen isn't capable of doing. And at this point, he just hasn't developed those things, at the quarterback position in order to become, a great thrower, a phenomenal thrower. I mean, he can sling it, of course, and hit the open man if he's there, but he just hasn't developed those skills, like Tua, to be able to fit in those tight spaces, read coverages, and make a pass like he made in the national championship game in overtime. So the argument of using, looking at these 2 sample sizes, okay, Tua's got a smaller sample size, but he's shown so much potential. And then you've got Jalen here, who's been a run-first quarterback, and, we've shown what he's been incapable of. He's a phenomenal athlete. He can run the ball. That's right in his wheelhouse, right? But when you force him to throw it, that's just not his strength. And from his freshman year to his sophomore year, just take a look at the games. Me personally, I didn't really see a crazy jump in his actual skill level when it comes to the throwing part of being a quarterback, and multiple other areas, But shoot, I mean, just make sure I covered everything. The two sample sizes. David Pollack brought up anybody can. He was basically, his point was that anybody can play QB at Bama. The big reason I think Tua is going to start is for the simple fact that Nick Saban's he really wouldn't risk Tua transferring out, because at this point with the new transfer rules, coaches can't block their players from transferring. The only I guess authority that could block a transfer would be the actual SEC conference themselves. So I don't see Saban risking Tua transferring out. And at the same time, everyone is forgetting Jalen's a great runner, but so is Tua. He was the number one dual threat quarterback in the nation. And if you watch him, he's not, of course, he's not as fast. You can argue he's not as athletic as Jalen, and I could agree with that. But he's certainly quick enough. He's got the strength, and he can make plays when they're needed. But he's definitely a throw first type of quarterback. As far as Jalen's options, is what I think he should do. I think what's going to end up happening, especially if Tua starts and Tua stays healthy, Jalen's going to do his best, to obviously play less than 4 games, so he's able to transfer out after he graduates. And I think if he wants to continue, if he wants to continue playing at the quarterback position, he's going to have to transfer out. And I think one of the big options for him would be FAU with Coach Lane Kiffin, who just signed, I think it was like a 6-year extension down there. Other than that, if he wants to stay at Alabama and to continue to compete for championships, I think one of the better positions that he could transition to would be linebacker, because he's already a pretty stocky guy and he could easily pick up more weight. With the health and nutrition plans that they've got at Alabama. And then as a quarterback, picking up all these different schemes and defensive plays and all these things, he's already studied those things because he is a quarterback. So I think it would be something pretty simple for him to adjust to, or possibly even the safety position, depending on how fast he really is. Other than that, in this video, I'm no way trying to bash Jalen Hurts. He's a phenomenal athlete. The dude's strong as hell. He's quick. But, at the end of the day, I just can't see him being an elite thrower in the NFL or, at that next level. But I can see him playing as an NFL player at the next level. I think it's just going to be he's going to have to transition positions, just like somebody like Braxton Miller. Multiple quarterbacks have, changed positions, maybe in their junior or senior years because they knew that they weren't, necessarily at that level that they needed to be as far as the NFL goes. But with that being said, I think we pretty much covered everything. If you guys, I'd love to hear your own opinions. Just drop a comment. Hit me on Twitter at Just Another Critic. And I think we covered everything. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you watching the video. Like, comment, or subscribe. At the end of the day, I'm just another guy that's been watching college football for a long time. So I'm just another critic. That's all I am. I'm just out here sharing my opinions. And if you don't agree, great. If you agree, great. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys watching. If you stayed to the end, awesome. If not, no worries. But peace out, and we'll catch you in the next video.